Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. We are once again with Kevin, and we are once again on the GLAGG saga, and we're beginning at the beginning of year 2, and a lot of water under the bridge, and they've decided at this point that GLAGG was too close to town, and he really needed to be moved somewhere a little bit safer. And after what Kevin was talking about last time, there apparently was some other troop that was either had that territory or were near that territory, and apparently weren't integrating GLAGG into their troop, but beating on them instead. So between that and the scary possibility that either his brothers would find out or some hunter would just come walking through the area and blast them, it sounds like a lot of good reasons to actually get him moved somewhere else. So with that, let's welcome back Kevin. Hey, welcome back, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing, Duke? Hello, everybody.
Doing good. Glad to have you back again, brother. So I guess this is going to be an adventure episode here because you guys spent a bunch of time trying to figure out where you could move him to that might be good. And man, with I don't envy the prospect of having to do something like that. This must have been really a hair puller for you, trying to figure out where. I mean, you could get the data from the humans. Yeah, where do they not hunt? Where are there not trails that humans are usually on? You can steer them toward that part of the woods. But then when you get out there, you've got to canvass the area and see if there's any kind of, other signs of Bigfoot around there. And while we're on the subject of signs of Bigfoot, one question I didn't ask you last time in the Q&A session was, did you ever see him build any stick or tree structures?
I never saw him build any, but I saw some around the area.
Did you ever see any that you thought he made?
That I never thought about it. I just assumed yes, because that was fairly close to his home where he was staying.
Well, the reason that I'm drawing that line there, connecting the dots, is that if you had seen him do it, or if you had the idea that he was actually doing this, it would be something that you could look for that would tip you off there'd be other Bigfoot in the area. And let's face it, they don't leave a lot of signs. It's not very easy to figure out they're there most of the time. So I was just kind of curious if you had, by the end of the first year when you were looking for a place to move him to, if you had figured out that there was some kind of connection between them and tree structures, and if you could use that as a way to figure out if there was Bigfoot in the area you were checking out.
It's in the process of moving that I started figuring all of that out.
Okay. So how did that happen then? Did you just run into some of the stuff that was so monstrous and you went, this is not natural?
Well, that's where, man, this is going to take a while. This was a huge undertaking, like, as you can imagine, but.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, man, where to begin? See, that's where, when I decided that we needed to try to get him to move, I started trying to get that across, and, it wasn't too difficult, but.
So, yeah, you were telling me previously that you actually took him up. You'd sort of get the idea across, let's find a new place to move you to, and then you guys would go up to the top of the mountain and point out which direction you wanted to go scout and then go over there.
Yep. And that gets into, all stuff that I'd seen from, let me back up a little bit. I was privileged enough to be able to take a ride in a small airplane more than once with some friends that had one, and looking at areas over, the backcountry, and you had a good idea of that. Gets into more stuff that I saw from that also. But anyway, that, just trying to find a good area where there's a stream or a creek or a river, and, just looked like it would be a good place to move, and then trying to point that out. I knew of a couple of spots that, there wouldn't be a lot of people. I knew the area pretty good, and that's when, I would climb up to the top. I don't even want to say that the peak that I'd climb up, not all the way up to the top, but up high enough, and point out directions and areas, and tell him that, if he could search over there for the next couple of days, because I'd be back in a week. And then, that was me going up other locations on my bike and looking at other areas that I could get, scout out.
So you guys were doing this together and independently. Sometimes he'd go scout an area, sometimes you'd go scout an area, and sometimes you'd both go scout an area.
Yes. There's a lot of times that I'd take when I'd have 2 or 3 nights that would go way off back in somewhere. And that's another fumble on our way through, man. Just, there's somebody watching out for us. But that's where, that gets into how I found out about the bad-tempered Montana side when I was by myself on my bike. And see, I didn't think about how I would move him across the valley, but I was just looking everywhere. And I was thinking, you know what, I'll put the wood racks on the truck, and I'll have him hide in the back of the truck, and I'll drive him across the valley. Luckily, that never transpired.
I can't see that plan working. I cannot imagine how you could possibly lure him into the back of a truck and get him to stay there. Oh, my God.
But that's where me being a kid thinking, I'm going to go check over here and see if any of this looks good.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, should I get into what I found over on the Montana side of the valley?
Well, as part of the scouting process, first of all, I'm kind of curious why you didn't think there was anything over on the other side of the valley where he was, just like further away.
I don't know why. I was just looking everywhere. I went all over. I knew areas that I'd been in and been hunting in before, and knew that there was some cool looking areas over here. There's some cool looking areas over here. There are some cool looking areas over here. And I just wanted to see if, now looking at it through trying to find a place that's something that big to live.
Right.
And
needs a big area, needs water, needs cover, needs lots of food.
Yep. And so I was just looking at a lot of different areas from where we would go when we were together. That was from where he was to back in farther back into the backcountry. Mm-hmm. And I would go further down, still on the edge of the backcountry, but where I could get, 60, 70 miles an hour
real quick the valley on my bike. Cut up into the mountains.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
Save yourself a lot of time getting there.
Yep. And then, moving, you can move, when you'd move, I just figured just take the time to go that way, but get some good areas. That's what I'm getting at, is I wasn't thinking that, it would be a struggle to get him to get in the back of the truck. I was just thinking, hey, go ahead, back here, and we'll drive to the new area, and then we'll walk in from there.
Yeah.
And that never happened, but that's what I was thinking.
I can't even imagine the nightmare. Oh, God, so many things could have gone wrong. I'm glad it never happened. I was a kid. That's what I was thinking at the time, is I'll just put him in the back of the truck and put a tarp over him, and nobody would know he's there. I never thought to ask him if he wanted to take a ride in the truck. I don't be a huge no.
I had never been up there in my truck. I'd been up there plenty of times in my truck, but not up to see him. It was always on my bike.
Right.
There was one of the times when I was out scouting a place by myself on my my better bike, my racing bike, not the old trail bike that I'd always ride up to see him on. But I was over on the other side of the valley, on the Montana side, and that's the first time I noticed stick structures and associated, and it's because of what happened is I associated that with them, and then that all started coming back, putting 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. I said that it'd be nice to go back with the wisdom and what I know now and give that kid back then what I know now, because man, actually I probably would have never left town. But
well, at least it would have made it a lot easier to figure out where to move them to and whatnot.
Now there's this one, I knew that they had just humped the road. They'd blocked off this area over on the Montana side a year or two previous. So I wanted to go check out that.
Just out of curiosity, what was it? Was it like a old logging access road, or was it fire access, or?
I think it was logging. And then after they got all the logging done, then they'd hump the road. That's where they'd make it to where it's dang near impossible to get through on either end of wherever the road, if it came out in another area, they'd chili hump both ends of it. That's just what we called it. But where they'd, for a pickup or anything, it would be impossible. But on a bike, I could go right over it. As I got over where they'd tore the road up, got back in there a ways, and, on the road, the weeds and stuff had started growing up a little bit. Not too bad, but was really pretty area back there. And that's when the first time I ever noticed a big, huge X, and didn't think anything of it until I saw another one. But as I was riding, down the road, a rock hit right in front of my bike. And I wasn't going real fast, but just, like idling in second gear, and a rock hit the ground right in front of my tire and bounced off. And it's like, looked up over my right shoulder, and here comes another rock that I saw. And so I just thumped it real hard. It's like, that didn't roll down the hill, that come flying. And I was thinking, who's up there chucking rocks at me?
Yeah, they don't normally go flying through the air all on their own. Something weird is doing this.
The first one, because I didn't see it fly, I thought, man, I didn't think the side of that hill was, big enough or steep enough that a rock had come down that fast. And when I turned and looked over my shoulder, just happened to see another rock coming, and it's like, whoa. And no, it's not. We're just rolling down the hill from, a deer or something running up there and kicking it loose, or just finally coming loose. That's getting chucked at me. And so I thumped it and got out of there. And that's when it's like, the realization hit me that, okay, there's some more of these things there, and they ain't too happy with the sound of that bike, because sitting there at an idle, it's going, oh, pop, 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 liquid cooled 2-stroke, and got a super trap on it that opened up pretty much all the way. It ear splitting loud, and just at an idle, and then, it'll split your eardrums, and then when you crack it open, man, it echoes through the valley. And they obviously did not like the sound of that RMX 250.
I wonder if somebody else is still playing with those same squatches, because when I posted your show on Idaho Bigfoot News, somebody came on there and posted that there was an area where there was some pretty hostile squatch that they like to ride their four-wheeler, their ATV through, and the things would chase them every single time they went through there. And he could, with this one, he could go 60, 70 miles an hour, so he could outdistance them if he was on the straightaway, and it wasn't too dangerous to go that speed. But it doesn't seem, well, I think he's scared, but I mean, it's like the guy is like one of these adrenaline junkies that likes to go run through there every so often and have all the squatches chase him and throw rocks at him. So I kind of wonder if, being that he's in sort of the same general area, I wonder if he's up there getting chased by the same ones you're talking about.
Well, we talked about that a while back, but I wonder the same thing, because now that gets into, you set GLAGG aside for a minute, because even after, after I figured that out, and I took my buddies up there and we would mess with them. And they did not like it, and they did that. I told you about that more times than I can count. Well, I went back up there and I'd scare the crap out of guys, because it's like, you believe in Bigfoot? No. Well, I'll change your mind. Come on, let's go.
Oh God!
And I told you there was that one time there was 4 of us, and it's just so lucky that none of us ever got killed, because through that one section, and you can't hide it. Even if you shut your bike off and coast down to where that stretch of that road was, we called it the gauntlet, because they heard you coming up the valley, when you're 10 miles away. And they heard, the rip of that engine, and they were ready for you. One of the guys I was with got I think it was his upper, the humerus, is right below his shoulder, got that broke with a rock, but he never got knocked off his bike. But they'd zing rocks at us, and we'd put on our racing gear and our helmets, and through that section, man, there's about a mile or so of that road, and luckily the road was good enough and it never deteriorated really bad. But stupid kids would go up there and rip through that valley just to tick off the Bigfoot that were over there. Maybe that's why the Montana ones are so ticked off.
Yeah, because you can just let them keep messing with them all the time. Leave our Bigfoot alone. They're already crabby enough. What the hell, man? We're the ones that got to deal with them. Quit pissing them off.
Yeah. Well, I haven't in years. You can't blame that on me anymore.
I know. But apparently other people are now doing it. And maybe with the same ones even.
It would be interesting to know exactly where he's at, because it sounds exactly like what we would do. And the first couple of times I never saw anything. All I saw was rocks. And then you got the yelling and screaming at you and chasing after you too. Never come down onto the road part of it, but man, at 25, 30 miles an hour, they're right beside you in the trees running, chucking rocks at you. I'm serious. You'd have to crack it open and hammer down to outdistance them, because I don't think they were trying to miss. I think they're trying to shut those bikes up.
Yeah, and I've heard other stuff like that before, too. I don't know if you heard that episode of Sasquatch Chronicles where they had the biker bar down in the big thicket there, and they had the big, long driveway on it. And the guys that would be going up the driveway in the middle of the night, occasionally something would come running out and, like, knock them off their bike because they didn't like the noise.
Yep. Well, that's the Harleys, too, so not as, snappy, but still making a crap load of racket, because the bikers, they've got, loud pipes save lives. Theirs are, they have them Harleys with basically straight pipes on them. I can see that.
Harleys kind of roar, though. They don't sound like, especially when you get into some of the more recent bikes. The rice burners from Japan that sound like giant mutated insects. I can see how they get pretty irritated by that noise, really loud in their area.
Yeah, and especially 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
And then doing stuff just because it's going to tick them off, mainly to scare the guy that's with you that doesn't believe in that, and then wanting to know when you get through the gauntlet who I had up there hiding up in the trees throwing rocks at us. And it's like, really? Are you that stupid? Who's going to be that far back in there hiding, waiting for us to get? Who am I going to get to hide up there in the trees long enough for us to get up there and then chuck rocks at us, and then chuck bowling ball size rocks at you? Who's going to chuck a bowling ball? Nobody.
Well, if they're occasionally doing vocals and stuff too, the vocals are so damn loud, you could have still heard that over the motorcycle. And how did they accomplish that?
Yes, you could. Then that would.
No, that's not a human up there making that noise. What the hell do you think was doing it?
Yeah, well, that gets into the humans wanting, not believing what they just saw or witnessed. It had to be something that you can explain. It couldn't be a Bigfoot doing it. That there's no way, because those are just myth and don't exist. And one by one, I changed the attitude of a lot of the guys my age in the valley about the town drunk, because now they realize that, holy crap, the guy that my dad, my uncle, and everybody in town has been making fun of, holy crap, he wasn't lying. And I think there might have been part of the reason why scare the crap out of the guys like that was just because of that.
Well, at least the next generation had a little bit different attitude about it. You're doing a public service there. Just curious, did that poor guy ever recover from that, or did he end up living under a bridge drunk to the end of his life?
I don't know. After I moved away, I don't know what happened. But I just remember it was, anytime anybody wanted to laugh, they would, guys out drinking, they'd say, oh, well, so-and-so got a tree pushed over on him by a Bigfoot. Oh, ha, ha, ha. And it just was stupid how it just kept going on and on and on the whole time I was growing up there.
That's just depressing, that poor guy.
Yep. And especially knowing that it probably did, well, knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that a Bigfoot pushed a tree over on him, and nobody would help him or believe him, and everybody would make fun of him. Just ridiculous. And I agree. Poor guy. I can understand why he's a town drunk.
Yeah, it makes good sense to me too. After that kind of, oh my God, that poor dude. I hope he recovered from it and he didn't end up dying in Alki living under a bridge. That's just.
I do too. I do too.
It's sad.
And
well, anyway, getting away from the town drunk again and back to your epic escapades of trying to run around all over the mountains and finding a place to live. Did you have any problems with the local wildlife or running into hunters or anything like that while you were out there?
Not too much. Whenever we was out when it was me and him together and trying to find a place, it was usually, it wasn't like hunting season or anything yet. And it was just, if it was just good luck or what, but never had, saw a lot of, deer and stuff, but never any predatory animals, no bears or mountain lions or wolves or anything. But
so that's all good. You weren't getting jumped by mountain lions or something while you're out there trying to find a new place to live.
Nope. But, it was probably a couple months of looking until I found the place to where we decided to try to move into and started moving.
Obviously, you didn't have like belongings to move or anything really.
No.
Other than him, so it was just a matter of find a spot, take him.
There was some of the stuff, like the stuff that I'd give him, blankets and a couple of exploded cherry balls. Just little stuff like that. But it was mainly just moving to an area that was safe enough for us to spend the night and then move a little bit farther. Well, not a little bit, a whole lot farther. And that got into something pretty cool that when I would get tired, he'd pick me up and carry me.
What did you just throw you on his shoulder?
No, he'd pick me up like a baby and carry me like a baby.
Yeah,
me at 6 foot tall and 200 pounds, he would pick me up like you would a 3-year-old and carry me.
Cover ground pretty fast carrying you?
Holy crap. Now this gets into something more of us having fun. Was after the first couple of times he did that, it kind of freaked me out when I wanted to sit down, and the first time he just scooped me up and picked me up and just was walking with me. But when he's not having to wait for me, when he is just walking, he's covering about the same amount of ground when he's just walking normally as I would cover at a fast jog. And so that's when I finally, I knew he was fast, but that's when it started getting me as how fast he actually was, because just him walking, not running, carrying me, we were moving faster than I could jog. About how I would run.
So if you were walking somewhere with him, you probably felt like he was dragging his legs through molasses waiting for you to get anywhere.
Yep. I think it actually got relieved when I got tired so he could pick me up and then move.
Well, again, the stories and stuff about them being able to cover huge distances fast are proverbial. They don't seem to get tired very easy either.
And I don't ever remember hearing a stick crack when he was carrying me. When we were going, it's not something I paid attention to, but thinking about it, I can't remember him making very much noise while he was carrying me and walking. Now, when he carried me and ran, it made more noise, but that was more the thump of him running, but not like
not snapping twigs and stuff, just the thud of his weight coming down on the ground.
Yep. And with an extra 200 pounds in his hand.
Yeah, which by that point was putting him up to about 800.
Yep. So it thumped pretty good.
Yeah, I can believe that. Well, how the heck far out in the boonies away from where he was originally did you guys end up going then?
We wound up quite, as the crow flies, probably about 20 miles.
Wow, okay, that's a ways.
Yeah, but got him, man, I don't want to say that, but it was farther, it was, back into the back country, back where motorized vehicles weren't allowed to go. After the move, it would take me almost half a day to get to where I parked my bike. And then that's when we'd meet, and actually where he actually stayed and where he actually wound up living, I didn't go there very much because it was farther back from where we'd meet. a lot farther back. I went there a couple of times, but that was later on. But we always stayed there, and I think now, knowing what I know now, the reason to where I'd park my bike and would go back there, and my bike wasn't just parked off the side of a mountain road. My bike was about 2 or 3 miles back in on some deer trails to where I parked, and got that down to where I could get to there every time pretty easy. But where he actually stayed, I was only ever that far deep in a couple of times, and it was him having to carry me back there. And that's why I didn't, because it was a long way back where he actually wound up moving, found that area. And I think, knowing what I know now, the reason that we stayed in that area, it was far enough away from anything that would, that I would have to worry about. That was a safe area that he chose, not me, that we would meet.
Well, you knew that it was at least safely far away from where humans were likely to ever show up.
Yes, it was way far back away from that. Well, like I said, where I got off of the road, I was about 2.5, 3 miles on deer trails on my dirt bike.
Yeah, that's pretty far in there, man. It must have been considerably time-consuming when you were going back to see him when you were that far back there. What was your, one-way, one-direction time going from town to there or from there back to town?
Yeah, that's what I said. When he finally got into that area, it was about a half a day on my bike to get to where I was at. So that it was after he moved. It wasn't something that I could go up and then come back the same day. I'd have to go out and stay the night.
Right, so you weren't doing any day trips anymore. It was go upstate for a few days. Yeah.
And there it started getting to where the trips back were fewer and farther between. But the first year or so of that, about 2 years of that, I still went up as much as I could. The winter was a little bit more difficult. That gets into having to get him used to the snow machine. But
because during the winter in the mountains, you got too much snow. You're not driving any kind of a motorcycle out there anymore. That's done. Yeah,
the motorcycle was always in the spring, summer, and fall when I could, and the other times it was my snow machine.
There's another problem, though. If you got a snowmobile and you're going way the hell back there, you're making a snowmobile trail for somebody else to follow.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that I always was concerned about, but where it was never much traffic at all, no matter what. Even in the summer, it was, how do you explain that? Where we eventually wound up at, where I actually got off of the road onto the deer trail, it was on, over on the Montana side where we messed with the bad attitude Montana squatches, was the road that I actually got off of and went on the deer trail. It was actually a road that had been blocked off.
Okay.
And so, but yes, you still got my snow machine, my tracks and, my skis, but it's back in there to where not a whole lot of people went. And where that road is blocked off, I would always try to, just just get out and try to, because when the people, if anybody came by on sleds, they wouldn't be looking to go back down that road. There's nothing back there.
Right.
And I just tried to, as best I could, never did anything real serious, but I would always kick over my tracks and make it as least noticeable as possible. I could never make them disappear, but make it to where when you're riding by on the road, it wouldn't be unless you looked over there real close and that, somebody's been back through there.
Well, I know from when I used to be riding a sled during the winter, which in northern Minnesota constantly, if I was 4 or 5 miles out in the middle of nowhere and on some snowmobile trail and I saw some single sled had gone off to the side following some deer trail or something, I would not in any way be even remotely interested in following that trail, because God knows what kind of crap he got into. And, if he did make it out again, wasn't always apparent that they did. You didn't want to end up in the same position, so you weren't going to go back there and just try it. Usually it was just unless there was a trail mark there. It was like obviously a snowmobile trail that people were using a lot. People would tend to not take the chance on it.
Yep. And that gets back into what I said. We fumbled and stumbled our way through and just thank the good Lord that nothing ever happened. See, it's like I said, if I had the wisdom then that I had now, would I go back there and, you know, getting in the late afternoon that far back in, would I get my sled back in there to that stuff? No, there's no way in hell I would do half of the stuff I did back then now. No way. But that's where my buddy was taking care of me, I think, more than that. I think that's, you know, it's really hard to explain, and it's hard to come to terms with now that, holy cow, being an adult, not being a kid, not thinking like a kid anymore, thinking logically and rationally. It's like, holy God, it's just so lucky that nothing, you know, really bad ever happened. That bad enough did after we moved back in there, but not like, you know, I'm still here.
Well, you know what they say, hindsight is always 20/20.
There's no way. You couldn't get to me now to do half the stuff that I did back then. But I wasn't thinking of me like that. And longevity, I was always going to spend time with my best friend. Period.
Yeah. 15, 16 years old, you're indestructible. I mean, everybody knows that. You can't die. Nothing can kill you. You're indestructible. That's what most kids think anyway. So they tend to take, you know, extra stupid, reckless chances, and, you know, that's usually around the age when they start breaking bones and stuff and find out they are destructible. But, you know, that's just a typical youth thing. I wonder if Bigfoot are prone to that sort of thing, too, being overconfident when they're younger.
Well, probably. I'm sure, well, every animal, the young buck has got to take on the old buck and get his butt whooped more than once.
Yeah.
Before he becomes the old buck that can whip the young buck's hind end. I think it's anything, youth and what is it, the saying, old age and treachery will outdo youth and vigor any day. Once you get older, you learn all the tricks, but you think that your youth and your what you realize when you get older is ignorance. You think that's going to get you through any situation.
Yeah, age and treachery beats youth and skill every single time, unfortunately. And that's how those old alphas stay alphas for a while, because they may not be necessarily as tough as the young pup that's going after them, but they got more dirty tricks.
Yep, especially one that learned Aikido.
Yeah. You and your Aikido Bigfoot. Jeez. And now you're telling me you moved him closer to Montana, too. Thanks, man.
Well, actually, he wasn't. The crabby ones were over there. We weren't that close. Where he moved to was up there closer, but not anywhere near the same area.
Well,
I stayed as far away from them with him as possible. It was just the stupid kids that were dumb enough to go up there with me and run through the gauntlet that went over there and played on that side.
Right. Well, tell me about the first day that you got out there to the new spot. Did you find him a cave right away, or what did you do?
I didn't. The first few times, like I said, I never went back in. I didn't see where he actually stayed until actually quite a while after that. We stayed right there where I'd parked my bike. We'd stay pretty close to that for quite a while, and there was a nice area there, and it was, again, not a cave like, big, deep, cavernous cave. It was more like where he was before, more like a
Jumble of boulders sort of thing.
Yeah, and he had set that up pretty nice by the time, he'd been back there a little bit, had the boughs and stuff, and had a nice little cubby hole. And that's where we'd usually stay and have a fire and stuff back there. Had a fire more often when it was farther back in there than ever before.
Yeah, because all back there, you're so damn far in, nobody's going to see any smoke or anything.
Yes. And the only things that would go overhead in the middle of the night were commercial jets. You don't get a little plane. And that gets into, it was, I think it was about a year after that one situation happened.
So he was already up there for a year then before that even happened.
Yeah.
So during that intervening year, were you still obliged to go like hunting for him, or was he picking up more of the slack of feeding himself?
That's when it started. I would still, when I'd come back, if I could see something on the way, I would get it. Nowhere near as much as I used to, but I still would. And that's when, there's some realizations started setting in that were pretty, what's the word? When I was awe-stricken and terrified and glad he was my friend at the same time, when he would come up with something that, he didn't use a gun, he didn't use a bow or a knife, and it was pretty, rip a shoulder off a deer and just rip it off was pretty, what's the word?
Gruesome? Savage?
Intimidating.
Yeah.
That, if he can rip a front shoulder off a deer carcass, it just, what could he do? There's no way to explain that. When you watch it happen, it's terrifying to see the power that this youngster has, and there's just nothing you could ever do to stop it.
Right. If you want, for the listeners out there, try and picture an already cooked full chicken. You grab onto one of the drumsticks and twist it off. And this is what he's doing with a deer that's not cooked. That
is still fresh.
Yep, not even cooked. And you can just go and rip the thing right off.
And get excited because there's a fire there and he gets to cook it.
So he never lost his interest in having a fire there to cook food with?
Never. Always. Every single time he got excited for the fire. Every single time.
It's too bad you couldn't figure out some way to teach him how to do that. And, find him a giant flint and tinder or something. He would have been making his own fires all the time. I tried, but the light and the fire, nope, that wasn't working. So yeah, he would. So then now later on, it sort of switched around to where when you'd show up, he would be waiting for you, but he would generally have his own food there, and he just was all psyched about you getting over there and getting the fire going so he could cook it.
Yes. Yep.
Not that he needed to, right? He would still eat the food raw if you weren't around.
Yep. Yes. And he didn't know what a napkin was. That was always a little disconcerting. But I got used to it early on. But there's no table manners, I guess. The word that what I was looking for. He's a messy eater. How's that?
Cat said, let me see the exact quote. Everything goes in the mouth.
Yes. And that was like, go ahead and get the hair off of that before you cook it, buddy.
Nope, they just eat that too.
And he would skin the hair off of my piece for me.
Was there anything? Was there any like certain thing that he liked cooking more than other things? Was there like did he have like a favorite food or anything?
The thing that we always liked was deer, but it was always plentiful. But who doesn't? Venison is so much better than beef, in my opinion. That's what we had. Well,
it depends on where they are and what they're eating. You get corn-fed deer, yeah, they're yummy. If you get ones who've been living in a tag elder swamp eating that garbage, they taste horrible.
Yeah.
That's why I had zero interest in venison hunting when I was a kid. I'd shoot a bear and eat that first.
The ones around, come down and graze in the farmer's field and go back up into the hills at night, those are, you got basically farm-raised venison. That's pretty good.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, then again, where I grew up, we didn't have any options. It was venison or bear, or that was pretty much it. And, around here you got these other things like elk and moose that are yummier. So if I'd grown up around here, I don't think I'd ever would have bothered hunting deer. I'd just be an alcoholic. I'd be totally addicted to elk. I'd be totally alcoholic about it. I'd be having DTs when I didn't have any elk meat to eat.
Yeah. And see, back when I was a kid, I wish I had the freezer or the food in the freezer now that I had when I was a kid. I would never complain. And when I was a kid, it was like, deer again. Yeah. And it was like, but, small town, that's what we ate. You hunted during hunting season to fill the freezer up for the next hunting season. And now I miss that. When I was a kid, it's something you take for granted. And it's like, not deer again. And now it's like, man, I wish I had deer again.
One thing I'm kind of curious about is what kind of variety of stuff did you see him catch? I mean, you said venison. Did he show up with other stuff?
Some, but it was always either, there was a couple times a young, a smaller elk, which is huge compared to
a deer,
a deer, but it was, most of the time it was deer. There was, I don't think he wasted the time with rabbits anymore as he started getting bigger or anything. And around there, the prey animals are deer and elk. Not a whole lot of moose or, the predatory, the bears or the mountain lions and stuff, but it was, some of the smaller cats, the short wheelbase cougar, bobcat.
Yep.
But it was usually deer. There's no pigs there like there is in the South. There's no. Yeah,
if they even got here, the grizzlies eat them. There wouldn't be any right away anyway. So that's kind of never going to happen up here.
Mm-hmm. And with the winters, I don't think the pigs could handle the winter.
No, he'd have to have like a Russian boar, and then again the bears and stuff would eat them right away, and there wouldn't be any. Yep. Some of the grizz around here get plenty big enough. Go back and look at the picture in the last episode of the one scratching his back that's like twice as tall as a 55-gallon drum on the other side of the tree. Yep. Yeah, that'll swat a boar's head right off. Goodbye, dead boar.
Yep.
Yum, yum, munchy, munchy. And everybody likes bacon, including Bigfoot. Now, another thing that comes to mind here in the Pacific Northwest, you hear a lot of this where the fishermen especially, where they'll have like, big fish traps and stuff like that, will get raided in the middle of the night. The Bigfoot will show up and like swipe all their fish and stuff in the middle of the night. Did he ever, show any interest in fish? Did you ever see him catch any fish? Did he ever eat fish? Did you ever feed him fish?
I didn't take any with me, and that I don't know. I never, the water supply that we had wasn't big enough for like a steelhead or salmon or anything, but it wasn't within, out of the possibility that he could have made it there, really quick and did that like on the salmon runs and stuff. But no, it's just, I'd never saw it because
you never
did it.
Yeah. I'm just curious if you ever brought up like any fish and shared it with them or anything,
No,
what kind of
never thought about
stuff you observed. Now, other than like meat, and obviously that's pretty much what he was stuck eating in the winter, But during the summer, did you ever see him eating any varieties of plants or digging roots or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of roots, and what he would have, I don't know what it was. I never actually witnessed him gather anything other than pine nuts.
Pine nuts, okay. What kind of pine nuts was he eating?
I didn't. I thought that pine nuts were. I don't know. They're pine nuts.
Well, you know,
they're the ones that have the pine cones.
Pine cones, okay. Like pinyon pine nuts, or I mean, I know they like those.
Yeah, that's the only ones that we had around there. You know, there's a lot of Douglas fir, a lot of crap. I can't even think of the name of the trees. But all the pine. It was all pine trees, and you know, always. You know, when the season's right, you can pick them up right off the ground. You know, at the bottom of a big pine tree. I mean, you could fill up buckets.
And of course, this goes back to again during the spring, summer, and fall, where you've got berries and stuff all over the place. Did you ever see him eating any berries? Was he ever gathering
gooseberries, currants? There's a lot of wild blackberries,
bosoberries, huckleberries.
Huckleberries and gooseberries, are they the same thing?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not very expert.
Okay, I was never sure which one was which. I know what the blackberries are. There's wild raspberries, wild blackberries, mulberry.
Tell you where I grew up, we had a lot of wild raspberry patches, and it was creepy to be in those things ever. I mean, if you're in there during the day, you're always worried there was a bear in there. And once I got to be older, of course, you know, if it was like around dark or afterwards, you didn't want to be anywhere near those damn places because you just like guarantee there was Bigfoot around it.
Yeah. Well, we were, as a family, my family, we were having a picnic down the river, and in this picnic area, you know, tables and, you know, the barbecue pit things on the stand. And there's a wild raspberry patch all along one side of it. It was a wall of raspberries. And we had picked raspberries while lunch was cooking. And then after we ate lunch, we went around on the other side and was picking some more raspberries. And there was a steamy pile of bear crap on the other side. So that bear was there eating berries while we were eating lunch, you know, 20 feet away, just on the other side of the raspberry wall.
I was just talking to Grizz up in Libby here. He's going to be on the show soon, folks. And he was telling me about the berry patches up there, and they started observing years ago that it was teamwork, or shift work, I should say. The bears would be in there during the day, and the Bigfoot would be in there at night. And you could always tell who was taking the berries off the bushes because the bears would just mangle them. You know, they just pull the branches down, eat the berries off, shred. They don't care. And the Bigfoot, everything would be gone, but the whole bush would be picked clean, and the bears would leave their piles of poop all over the place, and the Bigfoot would actually go somewhere further away and take a dump so there wouldn't be any evidence they were there. Yep.
And that's how I knew it was a bear. There was a steamy pile of bear crap right on the other side of that raspberry wall, that wall of raspberry bushes. Now, the only thing, you couldn't get straight across through there, you know, the 20 feet to the other side. You had to walk down almost to the road where you come up into that little picnic area. You had to walk almost all the way down to the road and back up the other side. But there's a big pile of bear crap right there. Probably brown bear, not grizz, but brown bear area.
And just so for folks that haven't seen them know, some of those raspberry bushes will get, you know, taller than over your head. You can't see over the things. They're so thick you can't really claw your way through. Unless you got like full plate armor on, you're not shoving your way through it because you're going to get ripped to pieces trying to do that.
Well, and that's what I mean. It was a raspberry wall. It was a wall.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get across.
It was probably about 8 foot, 9 foot tall, and solid wall of raspberry bushes, and they were wild.
God. I bet they liked that spot. Yep.
Well, the bears did. He didn't even wait for us to get me. Well, we were on the other side, hooping and hollering, laughing, giggling, and, you know, about 15 or 20 of us over there having a picnic, and he's on the other side eating raspberries while we're on the other side.
Again, bears are one of those animals that can get really acclimated to humans being nearby. I don't know if you caught it, but they had a video of a guy who was the salmon run. He's up in Alaska, and he's got a couple folding chairs. He's sitting on the bank, and there's a bunch of bears down in the river fishing, and he's up there fishing, and the chair next to him is empty. That's on his left. And all of a sudden, here comes this bear walking up and sits down next to the chair on his left. So that's how close it is to him. And this is an Alaskan brown bear. The thing had to weigh 1,000 pounds, but weighed an ounce. And it kind of looks down the river, looks at the other bears, looks at him, kind of yawns, and just kind of wanders off. Oh, my God. I would not want to be in that position, because if it decided to go after him, he did not have enough time to do anything about it. It was like right there. He could practically reach out and touch it. Yeah, but it was just acting like, yeah, just another fisherman. I ignore the human. He'll ignore me. That's the way it always works.
Yep. Just don't catch my salmon, human.
Yep.
Or if you catch one, that's less work I have to do.
He may have came up there seeing if there was any remains lying around first. But, yeah, he just kind of stopped, sat down, surveyed the area, and then got up and wandered off. It's one of the strangest pieces of video I ever seen. But that's a typical example. I mean, this is a wild brown bear. And, you know, it's less than 5 feet away from a human, just sitting there like no big deal, not scared of him. So you can imagine with the Bigfoot, as smart and sneaky as they are, I mean, they could be like on the other side of the tree facing away from you, and you wouldn't even know they were there. And they do things like that. You don't know how close they are to you.
They can be standing there with their head peeking out, watching you 10 feet away, and you not know they're there.
No, well, especially if you're 9 or 10 feet tall, because you're not looking up 9 or 10 feet for a head to be looking at you.
Yep, exactly. You're looking. It's just human nature. You hear a sound, you're going to look for something your size, which they know that, and they use that to their advantage.
Well, and generally in the woods, you know, even around here, unless you're running into like an elk or a moose or something, it's not going to be taller than you. So why would we look up any further?
Yep. And the only time a bear is going to be taller than you is if it's standing on its back legs.
Yeah, and then it's like pretty obvious because he's upset about something. If he's doing that, he's scoping the area or he's getting ready to boogie, one or the other.
Yep.
Wow. So you moved him up there. He found himself a new place. Did he find was it pretty well hidden and defensible? Did he have a really pretty sneaky spot that he had moved to?
Where we would meet and where we would stay was actually really cool and really well hidden. Just even, the little cave thing that we'd stay in. Again, if I didn't know it was there, I wouldn't. If I walked right by it, I'd miss it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always hid. The master of their environment, and just no matter what he's doing, the ability for him to stay hidden and not, keep his bedroom hidden also.
It seemed to you like he was mostly nocturnal, like he spent most of his time being awake at night?
Yeah. When he was awake during the daytime was because I was there. I thought that's what I started, the impression that I was getting is when he's up during the day, it's because I'm there and, my buddy's here, I'm visiting with my buddy.
Right. So you did get the impression that most of the time if you weren't around, he was probably crawling around at night. Yeah.
Because there is when we moved him back there, that's when I noticed that when I'd finally get totally tuckered out and go to sleep and climb down in there and he was in there with me and I'd go to sleep, that's whenever I'd wake up, or how you wake up and move around and notice that he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was in that situation, but in those situations, after I would go to sleep, he wouldn't be in there.
I suppose you figured if he was within close distance of the cave that he'd be aware if anything was going to be prowling around there, and he could probably get back fast enough that it wouldn't make any difference anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what he was doing was while I was asleep, he was making sure nothing happened, which now to me is terrifying to me now that I'm older.
On the other hand, I would figure that, like, if you were out there visiting him for a weekend, say 2 or 3 days, man, he'd be getting tuckered out because he's staying awake at night. You're keeping him awake during the day. When was he sleeping?
Well, that's what it's another back to that fumbling our way through it. Doing everything wrong. And yes, exactly, because when I'm out there and he's staying awake for dang near the entire time that I am there. And like I've mentioned, if I had it to do over, I wouldn't do anything, hardly anything the same. I would make sure that, during the daytime, try to get him to sleep instead of play with me all day. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is, I wish I had the wisdom I had now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole time that I am there, every time that I was there, he basically didn't sleep at all. And that's why it's,
don't beat yourself
now I
up
realize
over it. Kevin, you were a kid at the time and you didn't know any better. And, even had you been an adult, you still wouldn't have known any better because thanks to our government, we don't get to know anything about these critters. So how the hell are you going to find out about them?
Exactly. But that gets into, even though when he was tired, I know that he was probably tired. Well, let's save that till the next one. The cliffhanger on that what happened that one time, how do I say that? The most terrifying thing that ever happened to me when I was with him. We'll save that for the next one.
Right on. So, I'm just curious here to get some more details if we can on this about, and I recognize that you're maybe not a horticulturist or anything, but how many different plants that you saw him actually gather and eat could you identify? And one thing that other researchers have talked about is that there's like certain trees that they'll actually eat some of the bark off of, and that there's also certain leaves that they'll eat too.
Yeah. No, the leaves thing, I didn't have that. I couldn't tell you that because it was not any leafy trees around. I know there was some, white pine, I think is the name of it, the right underneath of the bark on the white pine tree.
You didn't have any deciduous around with leaves on really to speak of, so there wasn't much of a choice there.
And I would make tea, white pine needle tea, just out of water and boil the pine needles. And that's still really good to this day. If you make white pine needle tea, and then
you like that?
White pine. Yep. But
that's interesting. I wonder if he figured out how to make that himself. Find some discarded pot out there with a bunch of pine needles and some water in it. We'll know who's got it and what they're up to.
Yep. Now, could I identify it? No, but the different roots and stuff. I know wild carrot. I know what that is. He would harvest that. Wild carrots are all over. Out there, and had a bunch of that.
So did he have did he have that, any of that kind of stuff like piled up in his lair or anything like that, or would he just go out and eat everything that he gathered at the same time that he got it?
There was some stuff inside there, but never a whole lot. And that might be because where he actually stayed when I wasn't there was not where I stayed.
Oh, might not have been the same place. He might have had an actual separate lair that was just for him that he was storing crap in.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, how did you figure that out then? Did you see him like taking off to some other place all the time?
Well, I told you there was a couple of times that we went back in. I wanted to see, let me see where you actually stay, and went way farther back in. And there was another area kind of like what it was where we'd meet, but it was farther back in.
Right. Well, you got to give him credit for being smart enough to at least be like really cautious and go, my human's onto something here. I think I'll go even further.
Yep.
Make sure that there's nothing that's going to come bother me out here.
Yep. Well, that gets into where I told you they're so much more intelligent and so much smarter than you would ever you could ever imagine. I mean,
right. Did you, at this point, were you still, obviously you were still probably like trying to make communication better, teach him more words and stuff. Did he ever teach you any words in his language?
Yes. Well, and that's where not being around it for so long, I would like to talk to Cat, because I can't for the life of me remember what he used to call me in his language, and it bothers me because, at the time I never thought I'd forget that, and now
was Aishi, was it?
Man, that sounds familiar. Something similar to that. What does that mean?
Aishi means friend.
Okay, and that would be where the regional.
Yeah, he may have pronounced it a little bit different or something. But that's, you called him buddy, and he may have been using the Bigfoot word for that, which is, friend, Aishi.
Yeah, man, I've been racking my brain trying to think about it, but that's where, my health issues and what has happened to me since then is put a damper on that. But, man, that sparks something. I'll have to think on that more.
Yeah, I'll have to put you in touch with Kat at some point so that, you guys can talk a little bit about, the words that you heard him say. Yep. And I'm sure she'll jog your memory, and then you could probably remember at that point. Yep. I said something similar to that, but it sounded more like this, and she'd be happy to hear what the difference is in the way they pronounce it, because Taylor essentially told me the same thing. There was a bunch of words that she said that he had heard Scooter say, but Scooter pronounced them slightly differently, like you would expect, a human with an accent somewhere different to pronounce the same word a little bit differently. And that was about as far as it went with that. And he's convinced that it's the same words. They're just pronouncing them slightly differently. Yeah.
Well, and that's where that episode that you had her on, and she said that there's some of the words that she said, I just think exactly the same thing. It's just the accent for, different region. But yes, I mean, I can, the words are the same, just like the Texas drawl and the New York nose in the air accent. But there's several of those that I'm like, holy cow, that's exactly the same.
Yeah. Now, another thing that comes to my mind here is in all this time where you guys are running around in the backcountry trying to find a new place to move him to, and you're going out solo and checking out places, and lucky for you, you never ran into anything dangerous. And he was going out solo and looking for places. Did it ever appear to you that he had actually run into anything and gotten into a fight with it, or did he seem like he was okay the whole time?
Yeah, there was more than once that he had looked beat up.
And this was after, this was like in the process of looking for a new place, not necessarily getting beat up by whatever it was back at the old one?
Yeah. But and it was, yes, at the new place. That's why there was a couple of times when we got there where we actually finally settled, and where we met it moved a couple of times, and it wasn't that, right where I parked my bike, it wasn't exactly that spot. That had moved around a little bit, but, not super far away, but it had moved a couple of times before it got set into a place that, didn't have to move from, but not as bad as it was at the other place. But there again, he was bigger and he was learning. He had learned.
Do you think he still was like having tussles with other troops possibly when he was out searching these areas?
Yes, I do. When we were searching for a place to move, and he come back, or when we met up again, and it looked like he had been in a tussle, and I told him, no, don't go there again. We'll find somewhere else. And that's why it took forever to find a place where when I came back 3 times in a row and it didn't look like he had gotten a fight.
Yeah.
That's when it's like, sign. Well, yep.
So now, did you get him moved before there was snow on the ground, or was it already into like snow season by the time you found a place and got him there?
No, we started, it was after that hunting season in spring and summer, and it was before fall that we got into that next area to where he.
So you got a early start on it. You had a bunch of time to try and find a spot before it was. Because I was thinking, man, you'd want to move him to some place during the summer when you actually knew what was there. Because during the winter, everything looks the same, covered in snow and dead. You don't know.
Yep. And that's what I mean. It was actually probably about closer to 2 years when we finally moved. Not, because not 2 years, but longer than a year.
Right.
Because it was that summer and spring and everything that was in that place, and it was after that next winter and hunting season, and then the next, it was all of that with hunting season, and that in the fall when my brothers showed up, that in the hunting season and everything. After that is when it was the next spring is when I started looking hard as soon as I could get places on my bike that.
So really, you guys were into the second year before you even moved them. You were like year and a half in.
Yes.
Well, geez, man, what a job. So you must have been pretty damn relieved. I mean, even though he was further away and you couldn't visit him all that often, and you had to, stay there for a few days at a time when you went and saw him. At least it seemed like that was a lot better option. He was a lot safer where he was at than he had been where he had been previously.
Yep. And yes, well, the fact that the human possibility, was farther away, that made me feel better. And the fact that, I come back and it doesn't look like, it looked like you'd been having fun and, it was well rested and, didn't, you know what I mean? It didn't
not beat up, not stressed, not sleep deprived.
And instead of being, always happy and excited to see me, is happy and excited to see me and full of energy.
Okay, even more awesome.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out where I was going to go with this now. I had a question for it, and I can't think what it was. Were you still were you still like reading to him? Were you still bringing out books and reading him stories and stuff?
I always had a book. I always had a Bible with me too. I read out of the Bible to him. Well, that did on the last the question and answer session last time. I didn't think of that, but I always had my little New Testament with me in my backpack, and I always tried to have something to read. But there's a few times I read to him out of the Bible, and whenever I would read, no matter what it was, he would just always if I'd sit there and read to him for 3 days straight, he'd sit there and listen the entire time.
Totally enthralled. Well, Kat says that she reads from the Bible to the troop that she interacts with for like 15, 20 minutes every time she goes out to visit them. It's the first thing she does pretty much. And she
really?
gets the same reaction. They just sit there and listen to it. They're all totally enthralled with it. And
that's
considering the level of interaction they have with her, they understand a lot of English, so they're probably picking up a lot of what she's actually saying, even though it's, old style English. There's a bunch of words they're probably picking up.
That's really cool. I mean, the fact that, it's a relief knowing that I'm not the only one that has had, this type of interaction, for so long. It's like, who's going to believe, what I'm saying? But now to know that, it's not just me. You don't understand how much of just knowing that I'm not the only one that had ever had this type of interaction was actually a relief, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense to me, because remember, I saw a Wendigo. And for 40 years, I couldn't find somebody else that had even seen one. It's only recently that I found 2 other witnesses that saw one and survived the encounter. And it was a gigantic relief to me to even find one other person that had the same sort of encounter and saw the same damn thing that I did, and be able to trade notes with them, and then have another person show up. And, now our club is 3 people. Woo-woo. Yeah. Which is still not really incredibly reassuring. But at least I'm not out there by myself. There's more than one person that's had this experience and seen that thing. So, yeah, I can totally relate to that. And
that's why I would like to talk to Taylor, and I would like to talk to Kat, because, the thought of being alone, not like that, but in an experience, you know, it's hard to describe the way you feel when, you know, you feel so alone and know that there's, you know, not feeling like there's anybody that you can talk to. Right. And that's why I told you a million times, thank you so much for allowing that outlet, and the fact of knowing that there's somebody else that possibly in the future I could talk to that has gone through the same thing. It's that massive weight is lifted off my shoulders, and
well, I feel like I would be doing my job as a cryptozoologist and researcher if I didn't listen to your story and try and document it, whether I actually ever let anybody else hear it or not. Because the fact of the matter is, let's look at a good example. Albert Ostman, kidnapped by Bigfoot, 5 days with a family of Bigfoot, finally escapes again through a clever ruse of using the fact that the adult male was getting too addicted to his snuff and he overdosed him. And while the adult was freaking out trying to get to the water, he beat feet the opposite direction and got the hell out of there. Well, you know, this happened in the 1920s, and he didn't even tell the story until into the 1950s after the first big scattering of Bigfoot sightings out there where they named the critter, and they had people finding their tracks next to the newly made bulldozed roads that they were making in for logging and whatnot. This was, you know, a good 10 years or more before the Patterson-Gimlin film. And he came out and told the story, and everybody thought he was a raving lunatic and he was completely full of crap. Yeah. Well, now, this many years later, researchers have been able to take all of these details that he gave and vet them. And there's a bunch of stuff that he said that sounded just like really weird when he came up with it, that we are pretty much about 99% sure he was absolutely hit the nail on the head and was completely right. And we haven't come up with anything out of his encounter or the details yet that we've been able to debunk. So, you know, imagine if nobody ever took his story because it was just too crazy and they didn't want to write it down, we wouldn't have that information. And so I feel the same way about your story. You know, I totally believe you. I think you're telling the truth 100%. And some people may not want to believe you or whatever. But at some point, this information is going to come out. Bigfoot's going to be, you know, a proven species. The information on him is going to come out. And at that point, everybody can go back and look at your report and go, oh, damn, everything he said is right. I guess he was really interacting with the Bigfoot. Yeah, well, so was Albert Ostman.
Well, on the getting into that, why would somebody like me come out and face total ridicule, annihilation, and ridicule by, you know, annihilation of your character, and because of something that I've seen or done? Why would I put myself out there? Am I getting rich off of this? What am I benefiting from this? No, other
I can assure people that you're not making a penny off being on this show. And the other thing is Al Ostman didn't make a penny off his report either. He went and told the story. He recognized he was probably going to get ridiculed by 99% of the people that heard it. And he was old enough and late enough in his life, and thank God this happens to humans. We get to a certain point where we just don't give a rat's butt what anybody thinks anymore.
Yep.
You know, like I was just I was joking around today that I have mastered an amazing new power, not telepathy, but telepathy, which is where I can actually mentally send the message to somebody that I don't give a crap what they think. So don't waste my time. And this is the power of telepathy. Well, I think after you start getting into your 80s, 90s, 100s, and some people hit that age earlier like me, you don't give a crap what people think about you anymore, and you're just going to go say whatever you want to say and tell the truth. And if they don't like it, tough tushy. But, that's just the way it is. And so that's why you get a lot of these reports of, the really weird Bigfoot stories. These people don't tell them until they get to be old, and, they're one foot in the grave and the other one on a slippery banana peel, and they just don't care anymore. I don't come out and tell the truth. I'm going to tell you guys what happened. If you don't believe me, too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my health issues, what is it going to hurt to say something that I don't care what, the masses think. I hope that something that I have said or something that I can relate may in some way help somebody someday.
And again, this helps everybody in the Bigfoot community greatly because you're expanding the amount of general knowledge that we have on basic Bigfoot behavior and what they do. And that's why this is such an important story. It's not one of those, I saw Bigfoot and he, beat my truck to pieces with a 20-foot thick tree or something. This is one of those pleasant encounters, but this is one of the situations where long-term interaction, and you can get a lot of details on these things that it would take hundreds of short-term encounters to be able to compile the kind of information if you ever could. So It's worth so much more talking to somebody that's actually had, close-range interaction with these things than it is to, interview dozens of people that have just seen one run across the road or have it slap the wall in their house. And something like that.
You get into the intelligence of, it can't just be an animal. Animals can't speak. They can't. You can you see the videos of a dog saying, I love you, but it's a howl that kind of sounds like it. Now, this is something that's speaking a word and knowing what that word means, and you can talk to them and they understand what you're saying. It's not, it's the stuff like that I agree with you. I think it needs to be told. And I'm not asking you to believe me. I don't care anymore what people think. Look at how long it took me to say this. It's something that I'm doing for me. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it for me because it's hard to explain, but the weight that is lifted being able to tell somebody about it's a godsend. That weight is lifted, and if you don't have something like that that's pressing down on you, you don't know that. I can't even find the words to. Does that make sense? It just the relief of being able to tell somebody, and it is. That's the part. That's what I'm getting paid for it.
Same sort of thing happens with people that are in the military. You get these people that are like special forces and stuff, and they may be involved in horrendous situations in countries that we're not technically at war with, and they can't ever talk about it. It could be one of the most horrifying, grisly, shocking, mind-bending experiences ever, and they can't talk to anybody about it. They're not allowed to. So it doesn't matter if they got PTSD or not, they're stuck with it. And this is the same thing with a lot of these Bigfoot encounter people. They have, seriously bad encounter or something. Who do they go tell about it? Who can they talk to? Where's the group that they can go and get counseling for it? Newsflash, there isn't one. The closest thing to that is shows like Sasquatch Chronicles and stuff where it's like, we're not trained counselors, we don't understand all the psychology and everything, but we'll at least give you a place where you can talk to somebody, tell your story, and not get ridiculed for at least once in your life. And guess what? There's other people that have already been on these shows and still listen to these shows, and they'll send you messages too and go, I was on episode such and such. Thanks for sharing your encounter. That was really brave of you. I'm glad everything worked out, da-da-da-da-da. And, to somebody that's outside of this, that means nothing. But to somebody that's inside of it, it means the world to have any kind of positive feedback on this other than, oh, you're crazy, you're lying, shut up.
Yeah, well, and that's something I want to thank the listeners, the positive comments. That means a lot to me. That I appreciate that. Just the people that appreciate hearing what I have to say. That means a lot to me. I just thank you.
Yep. Just a fair warning to the trolls out there, it's a trap. I love killing trolls. And I have to approve all comments on my videos, so you can post whatever comment you want. Nobody's ever going to see it. Don't waste your time. I won't approve it.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. But I understand that there's going to be some people that don't believe you, but it's the ones that appreciate.
They don't believe it. I'll post comments like that. It's where they come out and they just attack the guest.
Yeah.
That never gets posted, and it's never going to be posted, because if I let people attack my guests, I'm surely not going to have any guests willing to come on the show anymore. So that's just not going to happen. And, you know, if they're making comments about me, I do post those. I get lots of negative comments about me. I laugh too much. My laugh is annoying. The sound quality is bad. Yada, 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 whatever. I'll post those comments. But just for notification to you dumbass trolls out there, if you think you're going to get on my videos and post some negative comment, don't waste your time, because I'm going to laugh at it, I'm going to delete it, and I'm probably going to report it as spam or abuse. So if you want to get yourself in trouble, by all means, I'd be happy to have you walk into my trap so I can ambush you and get your stupid ass in trouble. Other than that, keep your comments to yourself.
The ones that appreciate what I'm doing, I appreciate them also. And if you don't like it or don't believe it, don't listen. And
nobody's forcing you to comment either, you know. There's no show out there that I listen to every single episode and like all of them. Even my favorite show, Sasquatch Chronicles, and I love the way Wes does his show. It's really great. But occasionally he'll have a guest on there that I'm just not interested in or I don't agree with them. And that doesn't mean I have to go post a nasty comment. I just don't comment. It's that simple. Duh.
Yep. Knowing what I know and knowing how hard it is to tell somebody, it's hard enough for the person to come on there and tell their story. And what they don't need is negativity,
ridicule.
It's hard enough just to tell it.
Yeah. Yep. And you know, I understand this because I've been there. When I first came out and started telling my story, even though it was the Bigfoot community and it should be like, woohoo, link arms, we're all in this together, we've all seen a Bigfoot. No, I was shunned. That's not a Bigfoot. You're making it up. There's no such thing. You're just a liar. And it took, you know, a good year and a half to get a decent illustration of the thing put together and show it all over the place on the internet to get somebody else to actually see it that had seen one and go, oh, geez, there's a drawing of the damn thing I've seen. I need to get a hold of this guy.
Yep. Well, and it gets me as the people like me. Why would I get on there and lie to you? What does it benefit? What could I possibly gain from?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? What am I
nothing
gaining?
to gain here. No, he's spending his time and effort telling this story, and he's not getting a damn penny out of it. So why would he waste his time making up this whole gigantic, grandiose story and telling it for zero gain? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Especially when I don't. Exactly. It just gets me the people that think, oh, it just wanting attention. No, I don't.
What attention is he getting? How do you know that his name is actually Kevin, folks? So how is he getting attention?
Yeah, kind of what I was getting at. But it just, it's just thank you so much for allowing the opportunity to have this weight lifted off my chest. That's worth more than any amount of money I could ever get. The release, and knowing that I'm not the only one. That's priceless to me.
You're not. And I'm glad I could help you out that way, brother. You know, and I really appreciate it. If anything, I should be thanking you for having the balls to actually come on the show and tell your story. I mean, you contacted me. I talked you into coming on the show, and I had to give you assurances that you weren't going to get ripped to pieces. And, you know, for the most part, you're not getting ripped to pieces. I can't control comments on some of the groups on Facebook and stuff, but where I do have any control over it, I run interference for you guys, for all my guests, because as soon as I start letting these know-nothing clown trolls jump in here and, start making life difficult for my guests, then I will shortly have no more guests coming on the show. And like I told somebody on one of those groups, you know, if you don't like the guest that's on there, don't come on and rip on the guest. Just don't make any comment at all. Because if you rip on the guest, then maybe the next guest that was planning on coming on the show that you really, really would have loved to have heard is never going to come on the show because you ripped on one of the previous guests, and now they don't think that it's safe to come on the show, and so you're never going to hear them.
Yep. If you try going out and having your own experience and then try to tell somebody about it and have somebody do that to you. You see how it feels. If you've ever been in a situation to where somebody gives you a bunch of crap, you know how it feels. Everybody's been picked on at one time in their life or another. Remember how that feels. if you didn't like the way it feels, don't do it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And I've experienced a lot of that, you know, and I'm past the age where I really care that much what they say anymore. But, you know, just for the pleasant and friendly warning, if anybody actually came up to my face and called me a liar to my face, they better be ready to fight.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have an option at that point. I'm attacking.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing, is they always do it where it's safe for them. Yeah,
because they're pussies. Internet trolls hiding behind their computer down in their mom's basement.
Exactly.
Being malevolent and pimply. Soaking down their, you know, Code Red Mountain Dew. Playing their video games and not having a life. Yeah, you're so qualified to tell us what's real and what isn't. Shut up.
Yeah. All right, well,
on that rather crabby note, I think all trolls being duly warned that I'm out to slaughter them, and it is a trap. Please bring it on. I love to kill trolls. Thanks again for being on the show. We'll have Kevin back here. He's got 1.5 years of his 5 years worth in now, and we're going to get the rest of it. So never you worry. More shows will be coming out. We will hear the rest of the GLAGG saga. And again, thanks so much for being on the show, Kev. Really appreciate it, brother.
No problem.
And for all you folks out there, you know, just take a little hint from some of the stuff we were talking about on the show, sidereal to Bigfoot. Be kind to people that have things less well off than you do. And, you know, you'd be surprised how often it'll come back and you'll get something positive in your life as a result of it. Always try and help people. Pay it forward. Be safe. Safety first, safety last, safety always. And for God's sake, whatever you do, don't hug the Wookiee. Goodbye, everyone.